exactly what was. If you had.
Yeah, I don't think that's been fair. That's been important.
As will all of and not to perform a deal I use.
Yeah, can I just again refer in those papers? All you've got to do is read them. Reading people.
Chair, I think Councillor Hopwood's exercise. Prove it. It's unfair and wrong for three Tory MPs to band together to demand this money be allocated to reopen the DLI, which will cost Green more than 125,000. In fact, that figure will need to be multiplied considerably, and at a time when money should be utilised to address the spiralling cost of the living crisis. The idea is simply ploughing it all into one city project that will deliver little more than a posh restaurant and art exhibition space and not be accessible by a huge proportion of our communities seems very selfish on them. We have high levels of poverty across our county and our residents are in the throes of an ever-increasing cost of living crisis. So I formally second the motion and urge every member in Heather to support it and allow their residents in their communities to benefit locally from the small windfall that the City of Culture Runners-Up Award. Thank you, Chair.
Does any member wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Beattie, for bringing the motion. I think I need to make some facts very, very clear. It's not for MPs to decide what happens to this money, and it's not for this council to decide what happens to this money. The £125,000 has been awarded to the partnership that put the bid in the first place. So although it might be in our bank account at some stage, it will not be ours to make a decision about. Discussions are already well underway within the partnership, which is made up from people from around the county, as you suggested ought to be, and I believe that plans are moving forward. It would not be in the spirit of partnership for this council to try and dictate what that partnership does. On the point about AAPs, they are under a lot of pressure to spend the money that they already have. I have talked to a lot of AAP staff now. Obviously I liaise with their management, and one of the big issues that's coming to me is the fact that they can't get through the cash that they've got. So to add this to their burden would not be a welcome move from them. So I'm going to respectfully ask Councillor Beattie to withdraw her motion. I will make an offer that we can sit down and have a couple of hours to talk about how we can influence the partnership, what we can do in communities, and to talk about AAPs if you would like to do that. But regrettably, I can't vote for this, and I would wonder whether anybody actually can vote for it on the basis of what I've said, that it isn't within the council's gift to decide. Thank you.
Councillor Beattie, are you willing to withdraw?
Thank you, Chair. I would actually wonder why, well, I'm left wondering why. Sorry, Councillor Beattie, I'm afraid to use some of that question. You have a right to reply at the end of the debate, but you've been asked if you wish to withdraw your motion. So, no, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Tinsley.
Thank you, Chair. For instance, just take on board the words there from the Councillor regarding that this bid has come forward from a partnership. But do correct me if I'm wrong, that Durham County Councils are members of the partnership to actually write to DCMS and ask them that when we award this money, they give us the flexibility to push this money out into communities where we represent. I think we all agree that AAPs have been a huge success. We've had people visit us from across Europe to see the benefits that AAPs can give to communities. They've copied us, they've taken this model that we've created in County Durham, taken it elsewhere. That's an export, we should be proud of that. But really, it's a case, I think, really the fundamental thing behind this is getting this money down to the communities we represent so these people can benefit from the money. We're coming out of COVID, we're suffering from people with isolation and problems like this. Developing the cultural offer at community level is incredibly important, so we should be pushing this down. I'm really pleased that Councillor Beattie has to withdraw this motion. I think we should be supporting it, getting out there and getting money to the communities we represent. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I don't see this in any way as the council dictating any terms. You know, this is a proposal from the council as part of that partnership. On behalf of the people we represent, putting an idea forward for the council to be taken wherever it needs to be. But on a point of clarity, this motion has been validated by the head of legal. So if this council doesn't have any say, why was that validated? I see it the other way around. I think you do have a say. I think it was perfectly right to bring a motion like this forward on behalf of the residents we represent across the whole county. And I think we need to make that on behalf of the people that we represent, that the partnership used this money for the way it was intended. It was a county-wide bid, although it was a City of Culture bid. It was sold as a county-wide bid, and any benefit from that should be spread county-wide as well. But I'd like to have some clarity from the head of legal as well, that if this motion has been validated, then clearly there is a role here for this council to say, or to suggest, how that money ought to be spread.
I think I'm being asked to adjudicate on two different points which are equally valid. There is a partnership arrangement. Councillor Scott suggested that it should be the partnership arrangement that determines how that money is spent. The motion is that the council suggests that that's put forward to the AAP. They're not necessarily, one's not more right than the other, points to the position you take.
Councillor Miller?
Thanks, Chair. I'm a bit stunned that we're going to deny AAP some more money here. AAPs don't struggle to spend money because they've got too much cash. They struggle to spend the money because it takes far too long to process and for the applicant to get the money. That's what the issue is. So why are we depriving local communities of extra money? We should absolutely support Alison's motion.
Councillor Wood?
Thank you, Chair. It was just to say that I'm quite surprised by the cabinet member's comments on this, to be honest, given that the cabinet member represents a ward in Durham City. And it was just to say, if their AAP's got too much money, certainly spend anything they've got left over up in Chester Street. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just in response to Councillor Croot, Councillor Tinsley said it before, we should write to DCMS, and I think that should have been the appropriate way. Looking from the outside in, if we're voting on something that we have a seat at the table, but there's many other parts, it does look like we're dictating to them. It does look like we're saying, we want you to spend that money. We can still get that message out to them through the relevant portfolio, writing to the partnership and saying, we would love to spend that money, you know, here, there and everywhere. Not just that, there's been no decision made on how that money is spent. And when Council certainly said spend it in a city centre project, yeah, there is a potential for that, but nothing has been agreed. It isn't our money at this moment in time. So, just touching on the APs, I know my own AP. It takes an age to get things through because there's that much going on. And to put this extra burden on them is unfair on the staff. So I definitely won't be agreeing to this motion. Thank you.
Point of clarification, Chair. What I did ask is that our representatives on the partnership would ask the partnership to write to DCMS, but ourselves should write to DCMS. Thank you.
Sorry. Councillor Peel?
Thanks, Chair. I'm ever so slightly confused about some of the comments that have been made today, because I have heard many members of this council on social media and also in the chamber taking credit for the fantastic showing that we had in that processing and bidding process. So I don't quite understand how we can be claiming so much credit for it corporately when actually it seems we don't have that much of a say in the partnership itself. Clearly at some point we are going to have to make some kind of recommendation as council as part of this partnership, and the motion just asks that this be the recommendation that we make. I'm not sure where the confusion is coming from on the other side, but this seems to me to be the best way to guarantee that every part of the county gets its fair bite of the cherry in our rural areas, in the small villages like the ones that I represent, where it takes 45 minutes to get into Durham on a bus and it only comes once an hour. It It just seems like a way of making all of the residents of the county feel like they're part of this process in a way they maybe haven't done so far. And for us all to celebrate together, so I'll be supporting Councillor Bates' motion.
Councillor Grant?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm rather dismayed by the comments of two cabinet members here, and particularly about Councillor Scott's comment about that there's too much money. It's already a point been made by one of the councillors on this side of the chamber. Too much money isn't the view, and we thank them for that. And there are other aspects of the work they do. I don't think you should actually stand up and say we don't want to give any money to the AMPs because there's too much pressure on the workforce. If there's too much pressure on the workforce, Councillor Scott, then perhaps as the portfolio holder you should be looking at that. Thank you, Chair.
I am, Councillor, and you know it.
Councillor Willis?
It's like we're all in a parallel universe in this place, isn't it? I mean, which one of you was it who complained that we were giving £1.26 million to councillors to spend in their communities last year and said we can't do that because it'll put pressure on the AAPs? Which one of you was it? You tell me. Because let's just be clear here. You're talking about 25 pence per elector. We're investing hundreds of millions of pounds across every part of this county over the next few years. Hundreds of millions of pounds. And we're sat here arguing over 25p per elector. You know, these are the kind of reasons why you guys got chucked out of power. It's just ridiculous.
Excuse me, I would like to keep order. Thank you. Councillor Nichols?
Yeah, thank you very much. My maths isn't that great, so I just have to double check. So we're talking about £140,000, which is divided by 14 AAP, which works out £10,000, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. To say that AAP wouldn't be able to manage an extra £10,000 each, I just find it insulting.
Councillor Walton?
Just like some clarification. It's proposed to allocate the £125,000 for the council as a result. Is that fact? Has it been awarded to the partnership? If it's been awarded to the partnership, you haven't got the money, then that motion should just fall.
Yeah, can I just clear on that point that's been referenced a couple of times? So the motion that's on the screen reflects the point that in the amendment subject to the grant context, the amended motion has been agreed to go forward with this debate.
Councillor Walton?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just wondered if we could just move to a vote on this. There's been a lot of discussion. It's pretty straightforward what we're being asked. Can we move to a vote?
Chair, it's for you to determine whether or not the item has been sufficiently discussed. In order to put procedural vote to the item. Is that the procedural vote seconded? Is there a seconder to put the vote to a...
Yes, I'll second that. Yes, I'll second.
Chair, it's for you to determine whether or not the item has been sufficiently discussed. We have one member left in the queue to speak. So you may wish to allow that person to speak and then bring Councillor Batey in. If you allow the council to speak and then bring council to, we don't need to put procedural motion to a vote, but if you want to move to a vote, then that's what we'll do. So it's a matter if you think it's been sufficiently discussed, if you want to allow Councillor Johnson to speak and then bring Councillor Batey to go right on the
Yes, Councillor Scotland? Thank you very much, Chair.
Councillor Jocelyn Crook Ward. This is really a non-debate, as far as I can see it. At this point in time, the money is not ours. We're not the custodians of how to spend this money. And this has been a great hoo-ha over money that at the moment, we just don't know where it's going to go. The people, the partnership needs to discuss it. And then, if they want to come back, we could, you know, you can come back at a later date when we do know what's going to happen to this money. But this, to me, is just time wasting and, you know, getting my name in the paper or whatever, or in the minutes. It's just a ridiculous discussion we're having here.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, Chair. Since we dealt with that, we've now had 3 more people registered to speak. So we have a procedural motion to put the item to the vote. It has been moved and seconded. So I would suggest that we do put that to the vote. So do members wish to bring this debate to a close, invite Councillor Beattie to do the right reply and then vote on the motion? If so, they need to vote in favour of the procedural vote. If they wish to continue the debate, then they need to vote against. Hopefully that's clear. Just bear with us, we are going to try and use handsets to try and speed this up. But we will need to know the slide and we'll need to open the vote.
Chair, is it possible to have show hands because there might be consensus across the chamber here to go straight to the vote?
Yeah.
Show hands. Consent.
Chair, when we go to the vote, can I have a name vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit perplexed as to what's actually just happened because the very purpose of this motion, DCC have actually publicised the fact that we were getting this money. So I feel personally like we're being misled now, saying that it's partnership money, because at no point in time have I seen that publicised anywhere. We surely have members on that board, and for that very reason, I can't see why the motion can't still stand. Or if the opposition are so aggrieved to the involvement of the AAP, why it hasn't been amended accordingly, and a motion has been resubmitted. I mean, surely, if that was the actual case, this has gone through legal and been approved. Surely, if we didn't know we were getting that money at some point in time, it would have been kicked out last week, and I would have been told it was factually incorrect and it wasn't going to happen. So this is all complete news to me. I think it's news to a lot of people in the chamber, and if anybody over there sits there and says they knew about this, well, that's complete miscommunication over to this side. And I must remind you, we are the biggest party. So to be excluded from a community point of view in County Durham, when this actually affects residents in County Durham as a whole, and as quite rightly being pointed out, it's £10,000 per partnership. And I am sure your partnerships, or whether we do it through the partnership or whether it's somehow articulated through the partnership's involvement, that it's going to come out to a more regional perspective across the actual county. I know for a fact, Chesley Street, the AAP board I sit on and represent, I am sure they would be able to find a cultural offer in Chesley Street area that would be able to utilise this money and spend it. I'm at a complete loss as to what's just happened this morning, because in my opinion, the motion should never ever have been allowed to be submitted if that money wasn't coming to DCC. Taken into account, we have actually accounted for that, as far as I'm concerned, in that additional line that was actually added. I'm really disappointed.
Just as the Chief Executive has already reiterated, the reason for the alteration was to pick up for the fact that we don't know what grant conditions will be yet, which is why the The alteration was recommended and advised upon why I considered it to be appropriate. That makes the motion valid. Right, we're going to go to a vote. And because of the issue with having passes, we are going to do a roll call. So when I call your name, you can indicate whether you're voting in favour of the motion as displayed on your screen or against, please. We have had a valid request for a name vote, so the name and how people vote will be in the minutes. Thank you.
Chair, could I make a point of order? Could I just suggest that those people whose machines work vote, and then you look at the people who haven't voted and you ask them what their view is?
It's too difficult to work through Councillor. It's easy just to do a roll call. Councillor Adam.
Favour the motion.
Councillor Jay Atkinson.
For the motion.
Councillor Bainbridge.
Against.
Councillor A. Beatty.
For.
Councillor K. Beatty.
For.
Councillor C. Bell.
Against.
Councillor R. Bell.
Against.
Councillor A. Bell.
Against.
Councillor Bihari.
For.
Councillor Binney.
For.
Councillor D. Brown.
Against.
Councillor Cairns. Councillor Charlton. Councillor Cossett.
Against.
Councillor Court. Councillor Deanley.
For.
Councillor Early.
For.
Councillor Elmer.
Against.
Councillor Bantaro Derby.
Against.
Councillor Bennett.
For.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Freeman.
Yes.
Councillor Griffiths. Councillor Gunn.
For.
Councillor Hampson.
For.
Councillor Hanson. Councillor Hawley. Councillor Heatherside.
Against.
Councillor Henderson.
Against.
Councillor Henning.
For.
Councillor Higgins.
For.
Councillor Holmes.
Against.
Councillor Hood.
Against.
Councillor Hopwood.
Against.
Councillor Hobbles.
For.
Councillor Howard.
For.
Councillor Hunt.
Against.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Yes.
Councillor Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Joplin.
Against.
Councillor Kay.
For.
Councillor Kellett.
For.
Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Lyons.
Against.
Councillor Madison. Councillor Manchester.
For.
Councillor Martin. Councillor McAloo.
For.
Councillor McDonald.
Against.
Councillor McGowan.
Against.
Councillor McKenna.
For.
Councillor McKeon.
For.
Councillor McLean.
For.
Councillor McMahon.
For.
Councillor Miller.
For.
Councillor Nichols.
For.
Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Oliver.
Against.
Councillor Ormerod.
Against.
Councillor Peake.
Against.
Councillor Cox.
Against.
Councillor Pringle.
For.
Councillor Purvis.
For.
Councillor Quinn. J. Quinn.
Against.
Councillor S. Quinn.
For.
Councillor Richardson.
Against.
Councillor Roberts.
For.
Councillor Robinson.
Against.
Councillor Robson.
Against.
Councillor Rooney. Councillor Rowlandson.
Against.
Councillor Scott.
Against.
Councillor Sexton.
Against.
Councillor Shaw.
For.
Councillor Shield.
Against.
Councillor Simpson.
Against.
Councillor G. Smith.
For.
Councillor Sterling.
Against.
Councillor Stoker.
Against.
Councillor Stubbs.
Against.
Councillor Surtees.
For.
Councillor Sutton Lloyd.
Against.
Councillor Tinsley.
For.
Councillor Townsend.
For.
Councillor Baldock. Councillor Walton.
Against.
Councillor Watson.
Against.
Councillor Wilkes.
Against.
Councillor Wilson. M. Wilson. Councillor Wood.
For.
Councillor York.
For.
Councillor Zare.
Against.
Have I missed anybody?
Using councillors. For the motion, 49. Against the motion, 52. No abstentions. The motion falls. Thank you. Item 10, questions from members. 3 questions have been received for today's meeting. The first question was from Councillor Moore, who was unable to attend, so a written response will be provided. The second question is from Councillor Jake Miller. Councillor Miller, can I invite you to ask your question, please?
Sure. Question is, can the Cabinet Member for Equality and Inclusion explain how the Poverty Action Plan addresses the concerns raised in the Food Action Plan motion put forward to full Council in September 2021?
Thank you. Can I ask the Cabinet Portfolio Board for Equality and Inclusion, Councillor Alan Sheet, to respond, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can I thank Councillor Miller for his question? Rising food, fuel and energy costs caused by geopolitical economic factors driving up inflation is undoubtedly having a significant impact on all households across our country, impacting most acutely on those more financially vulnerable households. There are several mechanisms already in place to support those who face food insecurity across County Durham. Some are government funded, some are funded by this council initiatives. Some are being delivered by key partners. Some of the main examples of those partners, but not exclusively, being Citizens Advice County Durham, Durham Christian Partnership and East Durham Trust. We also have the Welfare Assistance Scheme in place to support those with access to enough money to provide basic household essentials, including food. One of the key actions in the child poverty strategy is to increase take-up of free school meals plus other pupil premium-based benefits for those who are eligible. And we also work closely with the food banks across County Durham, plus charities such as that Bread and Butter thing, which redistributes surplus food stocks at very competitive costs. The Chief Executive of that organisation will be attending the next Poverty Action Steering Group next month to update us on the work that they are doing at national level to inform our local approach. There is also a food partnership, Food Durham, which brings together key organisations within Durham with the aim of reducing food waste, improving access to healthy, fresh food, and to ensure that those struggling financially have access to food. They have a network of organisations that deliver projects and initiatives around food and are developing strategy that will need to align with our part of our partnership approach. The current consultation exercises vote for both the refresh of the Council's overarching poverty strategy and action plan and the child poverty plan include actions which specifically address food security. However, the consultation process designed to understand what more needs to be done to use the resources we have as a council and through our partners to go further. We've been keen to ensure that we engage with all area action partnerships to gain the vital information and intelligence and build on local initiatives already in place to inform our own strategy refresh. The consultation process will be brought back to Cabinet in November with an updated strategy and action plan. This will include a specific food strategy to underpin the wider actions to address poverty. This is in line with the county plan, which has been previously referred to by Councillor Richard Bell. I would urge all members to put forward their views as part of the consultation process and to encourage the local community groups you work with to do the same. I also want to give some assurance that we're looking at what we can do using our Welfare Assistance Reserve in line with our poverty strategy and action plan refresh to provide more outgoing support to those residents that are struggling financially during the current situation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes.
Thanks, Chair. Do you find it interesting you mentioned financially vulnerable, financially vulnerable families? So can you explain how helping residents in crisis move away from accessing food and other financial support by working with the credit unions to access loans? How does that actually pull people out of poverty?
Councillor Street, would you like to come
there are various mechanisms that needs to be acknowledged that provide that level of support. The Welfare Assistance Scheme, last year, that level of total expenditure was some £632,000. This year to date, we're almost 50% ahead of that. So we acknowledge that there is an issue. That Welfare Assistance Scheme is what I would call the first point of contact. It's not necessary, but it needs to be considered as an option for residents that they can access free interest-free loans if that's their decision. But there are other options available which can be made available, welfare assistance being a classic example, and I would urge everybody to reference that information, and also the government support, the household support fund can be provided also. I'm happy to give a further detailed written response on that particular issue if required. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. The third and final question is from Councillor Lucy Roberts. Councillor Roberts, can I invite you to ask the question, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask the Cabinet Member for Resources, Investment and Assets, please to explain what the Council's strategy is to regenerate our villages by redevelopment or demolishing vacant buildings, such as the Bluebell School in Trimlin Grange, instead of leaving them to become a target for antisocial behaviour.
Can I ask the Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Resources, Investment and Assets, Councillor James Robertson, to respond, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Councillor Hobbles for a question. The Council will be aware that we are currently in the middle of a process of developing the first inclusive economic strategy for the county. And as part of that process, we have been undertaking 4 months of conversations with key stakeholders, residents and communities. Over 1,500 people completed the questionnaire and a further 1,500 people engaged in the structured events during the consultation process. One of the key issues which has come out is the importance of creating attractive and sustainable communities, and this includes a number of former minor villages. Members will be able to contribute to the next stage of the development of the strategy in advance of the Cabinet being asked to agree the final version in the autumn, and I would expect Councillor Hubbles and other members will actively engage in the strategy process. We are looking into setting up a joint working group with the police and fire service around the issues of vacant properties and the issues of fire and antisocial behaviour. The issue of specific vacant properties across the county is one that will need to be dealt with on an individual basis, and the relevant officers will contact council holders to discuss the issues in Trimlin Grange. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I just ask how many empty property buildings we have, such as this, across the county? I know the Bluebell's been standing empty for 2 years and nothing's been done, and that's what brought me to bring it to this council's attention this morning. And how much is this costing this council to manage the risks such as asbestos, taking lead from the roof, which is happening, and the fire risks, the arson attached to that, and also the cost comes along, like I said, with our partners. So that then would be my 2 supplementary questions of the portfolio, because it does create blight, eyesore within our communities, and you know, we talk about levelling up, and I would hope to get something sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased that Councillor Hobbs has brought up the Bluebell School in Trimlin Grange. For information of the Council, it was closed in September 2020 by the previous Cabinet and has stood empty ever since, and there was never a plan or a strategy in place to deal with it. Planning colleagues are now working through the development process. The economic strategy will come forward into the Council in the autumn, and thanks to Councillor Scott and the Joint Administration County Durham. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can I just ask for accuracy in responses from cabinet members?
Point of order, Chair. It's not procedural. She's asking for an opinion. It's not a process.
It is a point of order, Chair, in that I believe there was an inaccuracy in the response that Councillor Rowlandson has actually given to this council. I would like to say that whilst it may have been administratively that Durham County Council closed the Trimdon School, it was in fact, by that point in time, had been turned over to a multi-academy trust. It was a trust decision not to move into that building. Thank you.
Chair, and clarity, Councillor Sexton is correct in that points of order needs to relate to breaches of council procedurals or legislation, not to be raised if members are unhappy or dissatisfied with the response to the question proposed.
I believe we indicated that only one question was allowed. Can you just clarify that? So under the understanding that on a question that was given notice for, the person posing the question is allowed a supplementary question.
One supplementary question.
Okay. So there was a right to come back as well.
There was a right to come back, but it was one supplementary question, and Councillor Rowlands chose one of the questions to respond to.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes today's business. Before the meeting finishes, I would like to thank everyone who took part, and those members of the public who have watched this meeting. Thank you for your attendance. Can you please give your handsets and hands